We have been referring to this Sunday as Boxing Sunday. Despite the lively images suggested by that name, it has nothing to do with pugilistic expositions by family members that have been forced to be together for too long over the weekend. Nor does it have anything to do with that overwhelming pile of boxes and paper that you have after this time of year. As scheduled would have, our recycling people came by the day before Christmas, which means we get to hold on to those things for another 2 weeks. Nor does the day have something to do with the fact that the day after Christmas is the largest day for returns of Christmas presents. And so bringing all those boxes back to the store. So where does that term Boxing Day come from? It seems like an easy question to answer, but in some ways it's a little complicated. It's a couple different answers. It's sort of like the chauffeur who had been chauffeuring around this science professor through all of his lectures, and the guy was giving the same canned speech at every place he went, and after about a dozen of these, the chauffeur turned to the scientist and he said, "You know, I think I could give your speech for you." And he says, "I'll bet you $50 you could." So they changed clothes, and so the chauffeur was wearing the tuxedo, and the professor was wearing the chauffeur's outfit, and they went to this banquet, and the chauffeur in his tuxedo went up to the head table, and it came time for the speech. He got up there, and he just gave that speech just exactly as he had heard the professor give it time after time. He sat down, and people were just thrilled with his message, and the MC of the event said, "We are so thrilled to have you here with us today. And what a fine resource you are. And since we do have a few extra moments, do you mind if we have some time for some questions and answers?" He said, "Well, okay." And one person got up with this question. It was such a complicated question that he didn't even understand the question, let alone how to answer it. But without even pausing, he said, "You know, that's the stupidest question I've ever heard." And in fact, that is such a stupid question. I'll bet my chauffeur could answer that question. To get the answers about Boxing Sunday, I turned to Wikipedia and some other internet sources. There are two main schools of thought. Some historians maintain that it began as a holiday tradition where there were house servants that they had to help the households through Christmas. But after Christmas was over, the masters of the house would box up food and clothes and other things as presents for them, and they would take them home. Another tradition says that Boxing Sunday is named because the churches would often have wooden collection boxes that they would collect coins and funds in, and then on the day after Christmas they would hand them out to the poor in their neighborhood. Today, Boxing Sunday is celebrated by most other English-speaking countries, including Great Britain and Canada and Australia and New Zealand, and England, and the United States seems to be a notable exception to that. In South Africa, Boxing Day was renamed Day of Goodwill. And some European countries, it's called the second Christmas Day. And usually it is celebrated on December 26th, but as I did some research, I found out that depending on what day it falls on, if it falls at the 26th would be a Sunday or another holiday, they'll postpone it to another day. So for us to have on the 27th, it's okay. And most liturgical churches, today is often referred to as the Feast of Stephen. Stephen was one of the 7 original deacons of the church who were ordained by the apostles to help take care of the physical needs of the poor. With all the names and dates associated with this day that we're calling Boxing Day, I might want to call a chauffeur to explain it all, especially when in some ways it's the most humble day of the Christian year. On Christmas Sunday, we have large crowds, probably second to Easter Sunday. But the Sunday after Christmas and the Sunday after Easter are often low Sundays. And we have Thanksgiving Sunday, and we have 4 Sundays leading up to Christmas. But yet today is not even yet a part of the next season called Epiphany. But to me, it shouldn't be that way. This shouldn't be a low Sunday, it should be a high Sunday. And it's sort of like, if you give a kid a bunch of gifts and they open up those presents and then they would just leave them under the tree, that's not the way it should be. Kind of reminds me of an old story that John Maxwell repeats about this old fisherman who was getting ready to go out, and a man came by and asked if he could join him. He said, well, come on board. Gets in the boat and they start heading out away from the shore, and he knows the guy doesn't have any rods or reels or anything, and so gets well out into the lake. He cuts the motor on the boat and begins to cruise down to stop. And he reaches into this rusty old tackle box, he opens it up, and he pulls out a stick of dynamite. He lights it and he throws it out way out in the water, and kaboom! And before long, the fish begin to float to the surface. The guy pulls out his fishing net and begins to scoop up all of these fish. And then he looks to the guy who's there, and the guy says, that's great, but you ought to know, I'm a game warden. The guy doesn't say anything. He just reaches into his tackle box, pulls out another stick of dynamite, lights it, hands it to the guy, and says, are you going to just sit there, or are you going to start fishing? For to us a child is born, to us a son is given, and the government will be on his shoulders, and he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. This Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace turns to us and says, follow me, and I'll have you just sit on a chair. He says, follow me and I'll make you fishers of men. It's all in our hands. And what are we going to do? Are we going to just sit there? Or are we going to start fishing? Romans 1:16 says, I'm not ashamed of the gospel because it is the power of God for the salvation of everyone who believes. That word power in Greek is dynamis, from which we get the word dynamite. So the gospel, the good news of Jesus Christ that we receive at Christmas is dynamite. It's powerful. Jesus said to Peter and Andrew, come follow me and I'll make you fishers of men. And this is not a passive activity where you're sitting in a lawn chair with a cooler alongside. This is an active following. It says, and once they left their nets and followed him. Leaving their nets was leaving behind their identity, their source of security. It was to go out into uncharted territory, to go where Jesus was calling them. And it reads, going on from there, he saw two other brothers, James, son of Zebedee, and his brother John. And they were in the boat with their father Zebedee, preparing their nets. Jesus called them, and immediately they left the boat and their father and followed him. Did you notice anything interesting here? There's one story of Jesus going to two brothers and asking them to follow him, and then repeated right after that is another story about Jesus going to two brothers and asking them to follow. There's nothing much more frustrating than unnecessary repetition of words. There's nothing much more annoying than the repetition of unnecessary words. But they didn't have italics, they didn't have bold print, they didn't have anything that they could do to emphasize it, so repetition was a part of that. Come follow me, I'll put you into action. Newton's first law of motion states, a body at rest will remain at rest unless an outside force acts on it. And a body in motion at a constant velocity will remain in motion in a straight line unless acted upon by an outside force. And Jesus is that outside force that sets us into action. And are we going to be fishers of men, or are we just going to sit there? And one of the hardest things about getting older is the loss of ability to do certain things. About 12 years ago, I went snow skiing and I broke my leg, and so I didn't like that. So the next church rummage sale, I put those skis in it, and those skis were gone. A couple of years ago, I went water skiing, and I don't know if I broke or just badly bruised my rib. And I don't know how you do that in water, because it's water, for goodness sake. But that slalom ski has been sitting just gathering dust ever since. One of the hardest things for people is giving up the things. biggie is, giving up driving, giving up a home. But how about church? Now, when does a church get old? Now, our church is now over 160 years old. When does a church get old? I think a church gets old when it begins focusing upon itself and everything about what's going on the inside of the church, and forgets what's going on outside of the church walls, and its need to be out there and to be fishers of men. I'm glad that that's not the case with this church. At 160 years old, this church still has a vision of reaching out. I had an exciting time this last Wednesday when we gathered together with some community leaders and some nonprofit social service agencies that are interested in some of the possibilities that we've been talking about with the Morgan building next door. And we don't know what's going to happen, but it was exciting just to think that this church is open to that conversation. At 160 years old, we're making sure that Christmas is not just about ourselves. We have our giving trees that we'll begin distributing after day. Outside of our church sanctuary, we have the paper tree. That we have all kinds of toilet paper and paper towels. You think, what kind of thing is that? Well, for people who are on food stamps, that doesn't cover that. The other tree that we have out here, just outside of here, is for non-perishable food products that we'll be sharing with Marion Polk Food Share. And the gathering area that's out between the parlor and chapel, you'll see all kinds of school supplies. Someone donated some adorable book bags, backpacks. I hope you see those before you leave. And the chapel, there's a tree that has been gathering personal hygiene products, so toothpaste, toothbrushes, deodorant, hairspray, combs, and brushes and the like. At the chalice entrance is our biggest Christmas tree. And that has all kinds of mittens and gloves and scarves. We'll be able to distribute to those who need something like that to keep warm. We have already been giving those out. After the tree was fully loaded, we started giving out to people who came by and needing those type of things. So today at the church, we're inviting you to help get around these trees and just scoop those things up and take them on down to the fellowship hall, where we'll have some time for sorting those things for distribution. We also have some cans that need to be marked on so that people know what they are. We're going to have some time for fixing some more of those snack bags that we hand out to people who come by in need. And see, that's how we stay young. A body in motion tends to stay in motion, the commercial tells us. We aren't supposed to just sit there. We're supposed to start fishing. One of my heroes in ministry, John Ortberg, tells a story about Dan Allender. Dan went to a Bible conference in Montana, a place that's kind of well-known, sort of being a fly fishing mecca. And so he decided he would try the same thing. He got out in a float tube. And he said that the mountains, the water, everything was beautiful. He said, I couldn't help but notice all the birds flying around me. I'm not really an outdoorsy kind of person. I don't know much about ornithology, and the birds surprised me. I thought they would be in bed, but they were fully awake and flying straight at me. And then I realized, these aren't birds, these are bats. I'm terrified of bats. So I started using my rod to kind of create a no-fly zone. I don't know how to say this, but I hit a bat and it dropped to the water. It surfaced and started towards me. So I hit it again. I kept hitting it, and this is horrible to admit, I drowned one of God's creatures. By this time, I just wanted to go home. But as it happened at this very moment, a fish decided to take my fly. And you think this may be exciting, but all I wanted to do was just get out of the water. I pulled out this big teeth-buried, satanic-looking fish. I don't like to touch fish. I was having a meltdown. I wanted to get out of that water. I started to swing the fish. I started to swing it so hard, forgive me, I ripped its lips off, which sent it back into the water. As I got out of the water, I saw a man sitting in a chair at the end of the dock. He was attending the Bible conference where I was speaking. I wanted to slink away, but he pulled me to him and said, "Son, I've been fishing for over 50 years, and I've never seen the likes of that. I just want to say thank you." My son Andrew, more than anything, wanted to catch a fish. So for the next 3 days, I took him out fishing and caught nothing. Finally, the man I'd seen from the dock pulled me aside and he said, "I see you've been taking your son out to fish." "Yes, sir." "I noticed you take him out between 1 and 3:30 in the afternoon." "Yes, sir." "Haven't got anything?" "No." Did you know the fish don't usually bite between 1 and 3:30 in the afternoon? No, sir, I didn't know that. Do you want your son to catch a fish? Yes, I do. Then what you want to do is to take these lures and take him out at 5:30 in the morning. So the next day, he took his son out at 5:30 and they fished for 2 hours. Nothing. Dan said he was so mad that God wouldn't give his son one lousy fish. He finally told his son that it was time to go in, and his son said, "Please, Dad, can I try one more cast?" No. And he thought, do you want to kill any hope in your son just like you've lost hope inside of you? So Dan said, you can't cast one more time, but you can cast 5 more times. He said, really? Yes, in fact, I insist. First cast, nothing. Second, third, fourth, not a nibble. They began to think, really, God? Dan's heart began to sink, but on the 5th cast, the magic happened. The line pulled tight, and Andrew started reeling it in. It took quite a while, but he finally pulled in this huge fish, a northern pike. On the way back into the shore, his son said, we have a great God, don't we? Yep, we do. Andrew said, I know God's name. Dan says, I've never heard my son talk like this before. What do you mean, Andrew? Dad, his name is the God of the 5th cast. First, second, third, fourth, no, the God of the 5th cast. Jesus is still looking for people to follow him. People who know that they're not smart enough, or spiritual enough, mature enough, but people who just keep casting. We just keep reaching out, we just keep encouraging, we keep loving, we keep serving. And maybe on this last Sunday of 2015, it's a good time to just take another look at our vision and our mission statement as well as our slogan. Our vision statement is, we seek to love God and our neighbors. Our mission statement is to reach, teach, and unleash people to know, love, and serve God and others. And our slogan, reaching out and reaching out. In other words, we're not supposed to just sit there. We're supposed to start fishing. You have to you've had to have your head completely buried in the sand lately to not know that there has been a new Star Wars movie that came out recently. One church was kind of playing off of this, and so they put on their sign, a long time ago, in a Galilee far, far away. I saw the movie, and I loved it. One of my favorites, Star Wars series. And the undercurrent of those movies is about this force that is able to overcome evil. For unto us a long time ago in Galilee, far, far away, a child is born. To us a son is given, and he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, the Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. The God of the 5th cast, a force, a power. Dynamite has been given to you. Now what are you going to do with it? Are you just going to sit there? Or are you going to start fishing? Let's pray. Lord, as we come to this Sunday after Christmas, help us to realize that you have given us something wonderful. And what a shame it would be if we don't utilize that gift that you have given us, the power, that dynamite that has been given to us to change our lives and to reach out and to change the lives in our community and in our world. Bless us as we try to reach out in your name. It's in your name that we